Have you ever stopped to wonder if there's a right way to read a poem? It's a bigger question than it sounds. Today, we're diving into a really radical idea that completely flipped how we analyze literature on its head. It's called new criticism, and it all started with its pioneer, John Crowe Ransom, asking a pretty simple but powerful question. When we read, what should we actually be focusing on? So, let me just ask you this. When you come across a piece of art, say a poem or even a song, what's the first thing your mind goes to? Is it the artist's backstory, maybe the time period it came from? Or is it just that immediate gut feeling you get from it? Well, that exact dilemma is the launch pad for the entire revolution Ransom was about to ignite. All right, so picture this. It's before the 1940s, and John Crowe Ransom is looking around the world of literary criticism and, well, he sees a bit of a mess. He felt like it was all just too subjective, too based on personal taste and random historical facts. He had a mission, to turn it into a serious business, something with real discipline, almost like a science. And this quote, it absolutely nails his entire philosophy. Ransom believed that critics were just getting lost in the weeds. They were so busy studying all the things around the work, the author's life, what was happening in history, that they were totally forgetting to look at the actual work itself. He wanted to pull the focus away from the background and put it squarely on the text. So how in the world do you build a whole new way of looking at literature? Well, Ransom's first move was incredibly bold. He decided to define his new criticism not by what you should do, but by what you mustn't. He argued that to really truly see the poem for what it is, you first have to clear away all the clutter that's distracting you from it. And here they are, Ransom's rules of exclusion, all the things a critic has to intentionally ignore. First up, your personal feelings. Nope, it's not about how the poem makes you feel, it's about what the poem is. Then, summarizing the plot, that's just a shadow of the real thing. And of course, historical context, the author's biography, the era it was written in, all of that is external. Even things like the history of the words or the moral of the story are just pieces of the puzzle. They're not the whole picture. Ransom's whole goal here was to isolate the text, to see it in its purest form. Okay, so we've thrown out our feelings, the basic plot, the author's entire life story, and all of history. You're probably sitting there thinking, geez, what is even left? And that's the magic question. That's exactly where new criticism really begins. Because with all that external noise finally silenced, we can at last focus on the inner world of the poem itself. This really shows that shift in action. See, we stop talking about the work, its history, its moral lessons, and we start digging into what's actually in the work. What's the meter? What kinds of metaphors and figures of speech is it using? How is it put together? What's its form? It's a complete 180-degree turn from looking outside to looking inside. Now, this leads us to a really key concept. I know it sounds a little heavy, but stick with me. Ontological uniqueness. Basically, ontology is just the study of being or existence. And what Ransom argued was that a poem has its own unique being. It isn't just a fancy way of saying something you could have written in a normal sentence. It's a self-contained object, a little world all its own, that exists completely separate from its author and even from you, the reader. And Ransom himself put it in this incredibly powerful, almost dramatic way. For him, a poem isn't just some nice words strung together. It's a desperate ontological or metaphysical maneuver. I mean, wow. In other words, creating a poem is this huge, high-stakes effort to create something that is truly one of a kind, something that you just can't boil down to a simple summary. So after all that, what's the big takeaway? What's the lasting impact? While the philosophy behind new criticism can get really deep, its influence over the years has been boiled down to one simple, incredibly potent idea, an idea that has shaped how literature has been taught in schools for decades. And here it is. This is the mantra. This is the heart of it all. All those rules about what to ignore, all the talk about ontology, it all comes down to these 4 words. Focus on the text itself. Just pay attention to the words on the page. That right there is the revolutionary and enduring legacy of John Crowe Ransom and the new critics. So we have to end with a question this whole theory forces us to ask. And not just about poetry, but about any kind of art. Does knowing the backstory, the artist's struggles, the historical moment, does that actually enrich the art? Or, as Ransom might argue, does it just distract us from the beautiful, complicated thing that's sitting right there in front of us? It makes you wonder, what do we gain and what might we lose when we only focus on the text itself?